I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would fight back. For 3 years, I wasn't. For 3 years, I was the woman who flinched at loud noises, who wore long sleeves in July, who perfected the art of making myself invisible. But tonight, as I heard Derek's truck pull into the driveway at 11:30, gravel crunching under his tires in that particular angry way, I knew something was different. I was different. The front door slammed open. I stood in the living room, not cowering in the bedroom like usual, not hiding, not preparing excuses for whatever imaginary crime he'd accuse me of tonight. "Natalie." His voice boomed through the house, slurred and dangerous. The smell of whiskey hit me before he did, that familiar scent that used to make my stomach drop. He stumbled into the living room, his expensive suit wrinkled, his tie hanging loose. Those blue eyes that once made me feel safe now searched for something to destroy. They landed on me. "Where the hell have you been going on Tuesday and Thursday nights?" He moved toward me, his large frame blocking the exit like always. "You think I wouldn't find out? You think I'm stupid?" My hands should have been shaking. My voice should have disappeared like it always did. But I thought of Gloria's words from our last session. Fear is just your body preparing to act. Let it fuel you, not freeze you. "I've been taking a class," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "A class?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What kind of class, Natalie? Who have you been seeing?" He reached for my arm, that same grabbing motion he'd done 100 times before. His fingers closed around my wrist, squeezing hard enough to bruise. This was the moment he expected me to crumble, to apologize, to beg. Instead, I rotated my wrist exactly the way Gloria taught me, breaking his grip so smoothly he didn't understand what happened. His own momentum carried him forward, off balance. "What the—" He stumbled, confusion replacing the anger for just a second. But Derek wasn't used to anyone resisting. The confusion turned to rage, the kind that used to paralyze me. He charged forward, both hands reaching for me now, his full weight behind the movement. He was bigger, stronger, angrier than he'd ever been. 3 months ago, I would have crumpled. 3 months ago, I would have taken whatever came next and told myself I deserved it somehow. But I'd spent 12 weeks learning that I didn't. I sidestepped his charge and his hands grabbed nothing but air. The look on his face, pure shock, would have been funny if this wasn't my life. He wheeled around, and this time when he came at me, I was ready. Everything Gloria taught me came flooding back. Not the complicated moves, not the fancy techniques. The simple, effective ones. The ones that worked when adrenaline was screaming through your veins and your hands wanted to shake. Derek swung at me, wild and uncontrolled. I blocked his arm and struck the vulnerable points Gloria had made us practice over and over. Solar plexus, throat, knee, not to hurt permanently, but to stop. He gasped, doubling over, and for the first time in 3 years, Derek looked up at me from the floor. Really looked at me. Not as his wife, not as his property, but as someone who could hurt him back. "Natalie, how did you—" I stood over him, breathing hard, my body remembering every bruise he'd given me, every night I'd cried myself to sleep, every morning I'd covered injuries with makeup and lies. "A self-defense class," I said quietly. "That's where I've been going. Learning how to stop you." He tried to get up and I stepped back into a defensive stance. He saw it and stopped, something like fear crossing his face. You can't do this to me. I'm your husband." "You were supposed to be my husband. Husbands don't do what you've done to me." Let me take you back to where this started. Not tonight, but 3 months ago, when I was still the woman who believed she deserved the nightmare her life had become. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was at Henderson's Market, on 5th Street, the one with the dim fluorescent lights that flickered over the produce section. I was standing in the beer aisle, carefully selecting Derek's preferred brand. Not the cheap stuff that might insult him, not the expensive imported bottles that might make him think I was wasting his money. Just right. Everything in my life had to be just right, or I'd pay for it. My cart was full of his favourite foods, dinner ingredients that wouldn't upset his stomach, snacks for his poker night. Nothing for me. I'd stopped buying things for myself somewhere in year 2. It was easier that way. I reached for the last six-pack of his brand when someone bumped into my cart from behind. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I wasn't watching where I was. Natalie? I froze. That voice. I knew that voice from another lifetime. From college dorm rooms and late-night study sessions and a version of myself I barely remembered. Beth? Beth Chen stood there in her nurse's scrubs, her black hair pulled back in that same practical ponytail she'd worn since freshman year. But her expression wasn't happy to see an old friend. It was something else entirely. Horror, maybe. Or recognition of something she'd been trying not to see. Her eyes travelled over me, taking inventory. The long sleeves on an 80-degree day, the way I angled my body away from her, protecting my ribs. The makeup that was just a little too heavy on one side of my face, covering a fading yellow-green that used to be purple. "Natalie, are you—" she started. But then her professional mask slipped into place. We were in public, in the beer aisle of Henderson's Market, where anyone could see, could hear, could report back to Derek. "I'm fine," I said automatically, the lie I'd perfected. "Just clumsy. You know me." But Beth worked at County General Hospital. Beth had seen me in the emergency room 3 times this year. "Clumsy," Beth repeated, and something in her voice made me look up. She wasn't buying it. Not anymore. "Natalie, I need to tell you something." But before she could continue, I felt him. That presence that made my spine stiffen, that shifted the air in the room. Derek's hand landed on my shoulder, possessive and heavy. "There you are, honey. I was looking for you." His voice was warm, charming, the one he used for other people. "Who's your friend?" "Beth Chen. We went to college together." Beth's smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp, taking in how Derek's fingers pressed just a little too hard into my shoulder. "I work at County General." "Ah, the hospital. Good to know Natalie's in such capable hands when she has her little accidents." Derek's laugh was easy, practiced. "She's always been clumsy. Runs into doors, trips over her own feet." Beth's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Yes, I've noticed." The conversation lasted another minute, surface-level pleasantries that meant nothing. But as Derek steered me toward the checkout, Beth called out, "Natalie, wait. You dropped something." I turned back. There was nothing on the floor. But Beth pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand, her fingers squeezing mine briefly. "Take care of yourself," she said, and the way she said it made my throat tight. Derek didn't notice the paper. He was too busy loading groceries onto the conveyor belt, chatting with the cashier about the upcoming football season. I slipped the paper into my pocket and didn't breathe normally until we were home. That night, Derek had 3 beers with dinner. 4 was when things got bad, so 3 meant I was safe. He fell asleep on the couch watching television, snoring loudly, one hand dangling toward the floor. I locked myself in the bathroom and unfolded Beth's note. The paper was a flyer, printed on bright yellow cardstock. "Defend her self-defense studio," in bold letters across the top. Below that, class times. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Free for domestic violence survivors. Confidential. No questions asked. At the bottom, in Beth's handwriting, "You don't have to live like this. I can't watch you disappear. Please. B." I stared at that flyer for 20 minutes, sitting on the closed toilet lid, my hands trembling, Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Derek had poker night every Tuesday and Thursday at his colleague Frank's house. 4 hours. 4 hours where he wouldn't notice I was gone. But the fear was overwhelming. What if he found out? What if someone saw me? What if? I folded the flyer and hid it inside my box of tampons, the one place Derek would never look. For 2 weeks, I couldn't bring myself to go. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd watch Derek leave for poker night, and I'd sit on the couch with that flyer burning a hole in my pocket, imagining what might happen if I were brave enough. On the third Tuesday, something changed. Derek came home early from work, angry about a deal that fell through. He wasn't drunk, which somehow made it worse. Drunk Derek was unpredictable. Sober, angry Derek was calculated. He grabbed my wrist for some imagined offense. I'd put his coffee mug in the wrong cabinet and twisted it until I heard something pop. I spent 20 minutes in the bathroom running cold water over the swelling, biting my lip to keep from crying loud enough for him to hear. When I came out, he was calm again, apologetic in that way that meant nothing. "You know I love you, right? You just make me so crazy sometimes, Natalie. Why do you make me do these things?" That night after he left for poker, I got in my car. My wrist throbbed as I gripped the steering wheel. The Defender studio was in an old warehouse building downtown, the kind of area that gentrified students called up and coming and everyone else called rough. I almost turned back 3 times. The studio was on the second floor. I could hear voices as I climbed the stairs, women's voices, some laughing. How could they laugh in a place like this? The door was plain metal with a small sign. I stood outside for 5 minutes before I could make myself knock. A woman opened it. She was shorter than me, but built like she could break concrete with her bare hands. Short grey hair, warm brown eyes, and a scar above her left eyebrow that looked old and earned. "You here for the class?" Her voice was kind but direct. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I'm Gloria Martinez. This your first time?" Another nod. "You'll do fine. Come on in. We don't use names unless you want to. We don't ask questions unless you want to answer them. We just teach you how to protect yourself. Sound good?" The studio was bigger than it looked from outside. Mats covered most of the floor. 7 other women were scattered around, ranging from college age to a woman who might have been 70. All of them had the same look in their eyes, the look I saw in my mirror every morning. "All right, everyone, we've got someone new tonight," Gloria's voice carried across the space. "Let's start with basics. Remember, the first thing we're fighting isn't an attacker. It's the freeze response. Your brain wants to shut down when you're scared. We're going to teach it a new reaction." For the next 2 hours, I learned things I'd never imagined. How to break a wrist grab, where to strike to make someone let go, how to use an attacker's size and momentum against them. But more than that, I learned I wasn't alone. During water break, a woman about my age sat next to me. She didn't say anything, just rolled up her sleeve to show a scar pattern I recognized. Cigarette burns. 6 months of training, she said quietly. Last week he tried again. I walked away. He didn't. I drove home that first night with my muscles aching and something else stirring inside me, something I thought Derek had killed years ago. Hope, maybe. Or just the tiniest spark of anger that I'd let myself become this person. For the next 2.5 months, I lived 2 lives. The first life was the one Derek saw. The obedient wife who had dinner ready at 6, who laughed at his jokes, who never questioned when he needed to work late or when money disappeared from our account. The wife who wore turtlenecks and long sleeves and smiled when his mother called to tell me how lucky I was to have such a successful husband. The second life happened every Tuesday and Thursday between 7 and 9 p.m. I told Derek I'd joined a book club at the library. He barely looked up from his phone when I mentioned it. "Just be home before I am," he'd said. "And don't waste money on books. You've got plenty you haven't read." Those Tuesday and Thursday nights became everything. Gloria worked us hard, harder than I'd ever worked at anything. She taught us that self-defense wasn't about matching strength with strength. It was about precision, timing, and understanding that someone bigger than you had more vulnerabilities, not fewer. "A man twice your size has twice the momentum to redirect," she'd say, demonstrating how to use an attacker's own weight against them, and twice the distance to fall when you sweep his legs. We practiced scenarios. Someone grabbing you from behind, someone pinning you against a wall, someone reaching for your throat, over and over until our bodies stopped freezing and started reacting. I learned which parts of the human body broke easily: the throat, the knee, the instep, The nose. Places you could strike that would stop someone without permanently damaging them, though Gloria made it clear we shouldn't worry too much about permanent if it meant survival. Your safety matters more than his comfort, she'd say. Remember that. But it wasn't just physical training. Gloria talked to us about the psychology of abuse, about trauma responses, about why our brains shut down when we needed them most. She explained how abusers condition their victims, breaking them down systematically until fighting back seems impossible. They make you believe you're weak, Gloria said during one session, her eyes intense. They make you believe you deserve it. They make you believe no one will help you. Every single one of those beliefs is a lie. One Thursday night, after an especially brutal training session, Gloria pulled me aside. "You're getting good," she said. "Strong. I can see the difference from that first night you walked in here, barely able to look me in the eye." "Thank you," I said, rubbing my sore shoulder. "For everything." Gloria's expression shifted, became serious. "Natalie, you told me I could use your name now. I need you to understand something. The training isn't the hard part." "You know what the hard part is?" I shook my head. "Using it when your mind is screaming at you to freeze, when it's not a practice dummy but someone you know, someone you're conditioned to fear. That's the real test." She gripped my shoulder. "And that test is coming. I can see it in your eyes. You're getting ready to leave him." "I don't know if I can," I whispered. "You can, but you need to know. Men like your husband, they sense when they're losing control. Things might get worse before they get better. Are you prepared for that?" I wasn't sure, but I nodded anyway. 3 days later, everything fell apart. Derek's pharmaceutical company announced restructuring. Budget cuts. His regional manager position was under review, which was corporate speak for "you might be fired." Derek, who built his entire identity around his career success, who used his job title like armor, was suddenly vulnerable. He came home early that Wednesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting him. I'd been at the grocery store and stopped at home to drop off the bags before picking up my gym bag from the car trunk where I always hid it. Except I'd been distracted, thinking about the new technique Gloria taught us last night. And I'd brought the gym bag inside, left it in the front hall closet while I put away groceries. I heard his car in the driveway and my blood went cold. "Natalie? Why are you home?" He walked in, loosening his tie, his face already red. "Bad day then. Very bad day." "Just putting groceries away? How was work?" "Work was hell." He threw his briefcase on the couch. "I need a drink." I moved toward the kitchen, but he stopped me. "What's this?" He was standing by the closet, the door open, my gym bag in his hand. Time slowed down. I watched him unzip it. Watched him pull out the hand wraps, the training gloves, Gloria's business card that I'd kept because it had the emergency hotline number on the back. "Defend her self-defense studio." He read the card slowly, his voice getting quieter, which was always more dangerous than yelling. "What is this, Natalie? I can explain. You've been lying to me. There's no book club." He stepped toward me. "Where have you been going? Who have you been seeing? It's not like that. It's just a class." "A class?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A self-defense class. Why would my wife need self-defense?" His voice rose. "Unless she's planning something. Unless she's been talking to people. Telling lies about me." "Derek, please, who have you been seeing?" He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. "Answer me." "I haven't been seeing anyone. It's just exercise. Just women learning." "Learning what? How to fight back against their husbands? How to ruin their families?" He yanked me closer. "You think you're smart? You think you can sneak around behind my back?" That night was the worst I'd ever seen him. Not just violent, but methodical. He smashed my phone against the wall, went through my purse, my wallet, taking my credit cards, found my car keys and pocketed them. "You're not leaving this house alone again," Derek said, his voice cold and controlled in that way that terrified me more than shouting. "Ever! Do you understand me?" I nodded, tasting blood from where I'd bitten my lip. "I'm cancelling poker night." I'm going to be right here every single night, making sure you're exactly where you're supposed to be. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. You brought this on yourself, Natalie. I trusted you, and you betrayed that trust. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare I'd never imagined possible. Derek quit poker night, quit his evening work meetings. He was always there, always watching. I couldn't go to the grocery store alone, couldn't check the mail, couldn't even sit in the backyard without him appearing at the window. He moved his laptop to the kitchen table so he could watch me cook, insisted I keep the bathroom door cracked when I showered, started sleeping with one arm draped over me at night like a chain. My sister Amy called the landline one evening. Derek answered. She's busy right now, Amy. Yeah, everything's fine. Just a lot going on. I'll tell her you called. He hung up before I could reach for the phone. Your sister worries too much. You don't need to be bothering her with our private business. Beth drove by the house twice. I saw her car from the living room window slowing down, her face worried. But Derek's car was always in the driveway, a constant presence. She couldn't stop, couldn't help. I felt my newfound strength slipping away like water through my fingers. All those training sessions felt pointless now. I was more trapped than ever, more controlled, more helpless. The woman who'd learned to fight back was disappearing, replaced by the scared, broken version Derek wanted me to be. I stopped eating properly. Food tasted like ash. I'd stare at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognize myself. The spark that Gloria's classes had ignited was flickering out. This is for your own good, Derek would say, stroking my hair like I was a child. You'll thank me later. I'm protecting you from yourself. On the 12th day of my imprisonment, Derek's phone rang at 8 in the morning. I was making his breakfast. Eggs, exactly 3 minutes. Toast cut diagonally because anything else was wrong. And I heard his voice change. Yes, sir, I understand. Chicago? Today? A pause. No, I can't. Another pause, longer this time. Yes, sir, I'll be on the 2 o'clock flight. He came into the kitchen, his face tight. That was Harrison, emergency regional meeting in Chicago. All managers required, no exceptions. Overnight trip. Something flickered in my chest. Hope? Terror? I couldn't tell any more. I'll be fine, I said quickly. You should go. Derek stared at me for a long moment. Then he went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closing. When he came back down with his overnight bag, he had my car keys in his hand. These stay with me? He pocketed them. Then he went to my purse, took my credit cards, found my laptop in the bedroom and locked it in his car trunk. Mrs. Henderson next door will be checking on you. I've already called her. If you're not here when she comes by, if anything seems off, she's going to let me know immediately. Derek, I'm not going anywhere. That's right. You're not. He leaned close, his breath hot on my face. And when I get back tomorrow night, we're going to have a serious talk about your future. About whether you can be trusted. About whether this marriage can even continue if you're going to keep lying to me. The threat hung in the air between us. Then he kissed my forehead, gentle and horrible, and walked out the door. I stood in the empty house listening to his car pull away, and something inside me broke open. Not in a bad way. In the way a dam breaks when the pressure becomes too much. I couldn't live like this anymore. Either I acted now or I never would. There would be no second chance. I searched the house frantically, found an old flip phone I'd hidden years ago, back when Derek first started getting controlling, before it got really bad, before I learned to hide everything that mattered. The battery was almost dead, but it had enough charge for one call. My hands shook as I dialed Gloria's number, the one I'd memorized because Derek checked my phone constantly. Hello? Gloria's voice, worried, cautious. It's Natalie. My voice cracked. I need help. Thank God. Beth called me 3 weeks ago. We've been trying to figure out how to reach you. Are you safe right now? He's gone, Chicago, overnight. But Mrs. Henderson is watching the house and he took my car keys and we'll handle it. Beth and I? Can you be ready at 2 a.m.? Yes, but Gloria, I don't think I can run forever. He'll find me. He has money, connections. Then we make sure you're somewhere safe until you figure out your next move. There are shelters, resources. You don't have to do this alone. That night felt endless. I packed one bag, carefully, quietly. Important documents. My mother's jewellery that Derek hadn't found yet. Some clothes. My phone might be smashed, but I had the SIM card tucked in my wallet. At exactly 2 a.m, I heard a soft knock. Beth was at the back door with bolt cutters for the locked gate Derek had installed last year. We moved quickly, silently. Mrs. Henderson's house was dark. Her son's bedroom window glowed blue from his computer, but he was wearing headphones, focused on his game. We almost made it. I was sliding into Beth's passenger seat when my old flip phone rang. Derek's number. My blood froze. "Don't answer it," Beth whispered. But the phone kept ringing. Then it stopped, then started again. A text came through. "Mrs. Henderson's son saw you. I'm coming home. You better be there when I arrive." Beth's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "We need to go. Right now." But I was already opening the car door. "No, drive away, Beth. Now." "Natalie, are you insane? He's coming back." "I know." Something had shifted inside me during those 2 weeks of captivity. Something hard and clear and absolutely certain. I can't run forever. He'll find me, track me down, make my life hell even if I get away. I need to face him, one last time. On my terms. "That's exactly what gets women killed." Beth grabbed my arm. "Gloria would tell you the same thing. You don't confront them. You get safe, you get help, I spent 3 years being afraid of him. 2 weeks as his prisoner. If I run now, I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder." I met her eyes. He needs to understand that I'm not his anymore. That there are consequences, that he can't do this to another woman. Beth stared at me for a long moment. Then she pulled something from her glove compartment. Her phone. "I'm parking down the street. The second things get physical, I'm calling 911, and Natalie, don't you dare die on me." I walked back to the house, my gym bag over my shoulder. Let myself in through the front door. The house was quiet, waiting. I stood in the living room and waited too. 43 minutes later, I heard his truck. Gravel spraying, engine roaring. He'd driven like a maniac from wherever he'd been. The front door exploded open. "Natalie!" I stood there, gym bag at my feet, hands steady for the first time in 3 years. "I'm here!" Derek thundered down the stairs, his face purple with rage. "You tried to leave. You tried to sneak out like a thief in the night after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done to me," I corrected quietly. That stopped him for a second. Then the rage came back, doubled. "You ungrateful, I gave you everything, a home, money, security, and this is how you repay me. You gave me bruises, broken bones, 3 years of terror. I gave you discipline when you needed it." He moved toward me. "You made me do those things, but I'm done being patient. I'm done being nice." He charged at me with more violence than I'd ever seen from him. But my body didn't freeze. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, every drill, every scenario Gloria made us practice, it all came flooding back. Derek tried to grab my wrist, that same motion he'd done 1,000 times. I executed the release perfectly, spinning out of his grip. His momentum carried him forward, stumbling. "What the—" He wheeled around, confusion turning to fury. This time he came with both hands reaching, his full 200-pound weight behind him. I sidestepped. His hands grabbed empty air. He crashed forward into the decorative bookshelf, the one with his mother's ridiculous, world's best husband mug collection. The mugs came tumbling down like ceramic rain, bonking him on the head one by one. The largest one, "World's Nakan One Hubby," in gaudy gold letters, landed directly on his skull and stuck there like a hat. Derek staggered backward, dazed, one hand reaching up to swat the mug off. But his depth perception was completely gone. He tried to charge again, the mug still wobbling on his head, and tripped over the coffee table, the expensive glass one he'd bought to impress his boss. He went down hard, tangled in the curtains he'd grabbed, trying to steady himself, the mug finally rolling off his head to shatter on the floor beside him. I stood there in my defensive stance, and something bubbled up from deep inside me. Laughter. Real, genuine, bewildered laughter at the absolute absurdity of this man who'd terrorized me for 3 years, now sprawled on the carpet, wrapped in curtains, surrounded by broken motivational mugs. The sound of my laughter seemed to enrage him more than anything else. He thrashed, trying to get up, but his expensive suit jacket was caught in the curtain rod. "Stop laughing at me," his voice cracked. "Stop it!" But I couldn't. 3 years of fear, of pain, of walking on eggshells, and here he was, the big, terrifying monster, looking absolutely ridiculous with world's best husband shards scattered around him like accusatory confetti. He finally freed himself and lunged at me one more time. This time I was ready. I used everything Gloria taught me: solar plexus, throat, knee, not to hurt permanently, but to stop him. Derek went down again, gasping, and this time he stayed down. He looked up at me from the floor, and for the first time in 3 years I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. "How?" he wheezed. "How did you—" "Self-defense class," I said calmly. "Remember? The one you were so angry about." He tried to get up. I stepped back into defensive stance. He saw it and froze, something breaking in his expression. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. Beth had called 911 the second she heard the crash. 2 officers came through the door, taking in the scene. Derek on the floor, surrounded by broken mugs and curtains. Me standing calm and ready, the obvious history of violence written in the fear on my face and the rage on his. Derek tried to spin the story. "Officers, my wife attacked me. She's been acting crazy, taking these classes, plotting against me." "Sir, I'm going to need you to stay on the ground." The female officer's voice was firm. She looked at me. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" "Not this time," I said. The male officer was already photographing the scene, the broken phone from weeks ago that Derek had never cleaned up, the new holes in the wall, evidence everywhere. "We have documentation," I said quietly. 3 years of hospital records, photos, witness statements from my friend who's a nurse at County General. Derek's face went white. "You've been planning this. You set me up." "No," I said. "I just stopped letting you get away with it." Beth appeared in the doorway, her phone in hand. I recorded everything from outside, audio and video. "It's all here. Him threatening her, him attacking first, everything." "There's more," the female officer said, looking at her partner's phone. "Dispatch says a neighbor's son was live streaming and caught footage through the window. It's already been sent to the station." Derek's face went from white to grey. "That kid, he was supposed to be helping me. He called me when she tried to leave." "He also accidentally recorded you smashing her phone 2 weeks ago," the officer replied. "Window reflection, crystal clear footage." They handcuffed Derek and read him his rights. As they lifted him to his feet, he looked at me with something between hatred and disbelief. "You'll regret this, Natalie. I'll fight this. I'll make your life hell." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You will. Because every woman you ever look at from now on will know what you are. And you'll remember the night you learned you're not invincible and that your mother's mugs have better aim than you do." The officers led him out. One of them stayed behind to take my statement while paramedics checked me over. Beth sat beside me the whole time, her hand in mine. "You're insane," she whispered, "but you're also the bravest person I know." "I'm not brave," I said. "I'm just tired of being afraid." 6 months passed like a strange dream. I pressed charges. Derek's expensive lawyers tried everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Hospital records dating back 3 years, all treated by Beth, all documented. The video footage from that final night. The live stream recording that had gone semi-viral in the local gaming community with the caption, "When the boss fight doesn't go as planned." Derek's trial was set for next month, but his lawyers were already pushing for a plea deal. They knew they couldn't win. I moved into a small apartment across town. Amy flew in the day after Derek's arrest and stayed for 3 weeks, horrified that she hadn't known, hadn't seen. We cried together, talked for hours, began rebuilding the sisterhood that Derek had slowly poisoned. "I should have known," she kept saying. "I should have pushed harder when you kept cancelling our visits." "He was good at hiding it," I told her. "And I was good at lying. That's what abuse does. It makes you complicit in your own suffering." I started teaching again, part-time at first. Elementary school, second grade. Helping children learn to read. Some of them came from difficult homes. I recognise the signs now. The flinching, the over-apologising, the desperate need to please. I made sure to document everything, to connect families with resources, to be the person I'd needed when I was drowning. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, I went back to Gloria's studio. Not as a student anymore, but as a volunteer instructor. I helped train other women, shared my story, showed them that fighting back was possible. Gloria hugged me the first night I came back. "I knew you had it in you," she said. "From that very first night, when you could barely look me in the eye. I knew." The viral video became an unexpected teaching tool. Gloria showed it to new students as proof that abusers look far less intimidating once you stand up to them. "See that?" she'd say, pausing on the frame where Derek had the mug stuck on his head. "That's a man who thought he was powerful, thought he was in control. Violence isn't power. It's weakness. And weakness falls apart when someone finally says no." Beth and I had coffee every Sunday morning. She'd been carrying guilt for years, watching me deteriorate, treating my accidents in the ER and knowing she couldn't force me to leave. "I almost gave up on you," she admitted one morning. "After the third ER visit, I thought maybe you'd never leave him." "I almost didn't," I said honestly. "If you hadn't given me that flyer, if Gloria hadn't taught me I was worth fighting for, I'd probably still be there. Or dead." The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, 6 months and 3 days after Derek's arrest. It was from his lawyer's office, thick and official. Inside was a handwritten note from Derek asking me to drop the charges, claiming he was getting help, attending anger management, seeing a therapist, promising he'd changed. I almost threw it away without reading further. But something made me look at the second page. It was another letter, this one required by his court-mandated counselling program. A full acknowledgement of his actions. No excuses, no justifications, just raw admission of what he'd done. "I hit you," it read. "I controlled you. I isolated you from everyone who loved you. I made you believe you were worthless. I destroyed who you were and tried to remake you into someone who existed only to serve me. I terrorized you in your own home. I made you afraid to breathe wrong, to speak wrong, to exist wrong. I took 3 years of your life and filled them with pain and fear." The words continued, page after page of specific incidents, specific cruelties, things I'd almost convinced myself hadn't been that bad, things I'd minimized to survive. The final paragraph made me set down my coffee cup. I will never hit another woman again. Not because I've changed, but because I'm terrified of what happens when they stop being afraid. Because I learned that night that violence only works on people who won't fight back. And because every time I close my eyes, I see you standing over me, not with hatred, but with something worse. Pity. You pitied me. The great Derek Brooks, brought down by his wife and a collection of coffee mugs. I will carry that humiliation for the rest of my life. And maybe that's exactly what I deserve. I put both letters in my evidence folder. Then I drove to the courthouse for the pre-trial hearing. The courthouse steps seemed impossibly tall as I approached. Derek's family was there. His mother, his brother, his cousin who was some kind of lawyer. They glared at me like I was the villain in this story. But I wasn't alone. Gloria stood to my left, solid as a wall. Beth to my right, her nurse's badge still clipped to her scrub top from her morning shift. Amy behind me, one hand on my shoulder. We climbed those steps together. Inside, Derek sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit. He'd lost weight, looked smaller somehow. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Shame, maybe, or just the memory of that night when everything changed. His lawyer approached me before we entered the courtroom. "Mrs. Brooks, my client would like to discuss a plea agreement. He's willing to plead guilty to assault charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, but he's asking, respectfully, if you might consider a recommendation for leniency." I looked past the lawyer to where Derek sat, his shoulders hunched, his hands cuffed in his lap. "No," I said clearly. "No leniency. He gets whatever the law says he deserves. Not a day less." The hearing lasted 40 minutes. Derek pleaded guilty to 3 counts of domestic assault. Sentencing was set for 6 weeks from now, likely 18 months in prison, plus probation, plus mandatory counselling, plus a permanent restraining order. As they led him away, Derek looked back at me one more time. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. Outside the courthouse, Gloria put her arm around my shoulders. "How do you feel?" "Free," I said. And I meant it. 1 year later, I stood in Defend Her studio teaching an evening class. 15 women, all ages, all with stories written in their careful movements and downcast eyes. "My name is Natalie," I said, "and I'm going to teach you something important tonight. Not just how to throw a punch or break a grip. I'm going to teach you that you're worth defending, that you deserve to take up space. That fear is not a life sentence." I still kept one of those world's best husband mugs, not in some prominent place, but in the back of my kitchen cabinet. A reminder that sometimes the universe has a sense of humour, that bullies look ridiculous when they fall, that the things we're most afraid of are often less powerful than they seem. Derek was released after 14 months with time served. I heard through Beth that he moved 2 states away, worked construction, attended his mandated therapy sessions. His mother still sent me hate mail occasionally, which I forwarded directly to my lawyer. I never saw him again, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Amy visited every few months. We'd grown closer through crisis the way sisters sometimes do. She started a blog series about domestic violence that went viral, raising awareness and funds for shelters. She never used my name, but I recognized our story in every word. Beth and I remained close. She'd started working with the hospital's domestic violence advocacy program, training staff to recognize signs of abuse and connect victims with resources. "You changed my life too," she told me once. "Watching you find your strength, it reminded me why I became a nurse, to help people, to see them through their worst moments and out the other side." On the 2-year anniversary of that final confrontation, Gloria threw a small celebration at the studio. Just the core group of women who'd been training together since the beginning. "To Natalie," Gloria raised her water bottle in a toast, "who proved that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's deciding that something matters more than fear." "To all of us," I corrected. "Every woman who ever said enough, every woman who fought back, every woman who survived." We clinked our bottles together, these warriors in yoga pants and tank tops, these survivors who'd reclaimed their lives one defensive stance at a time. I drove home that night through familiar streets, past the house where I'd been imprisoned, past Henderson's Market where Beth had handed me that flyer, past the old life I'd escaped. My apartment was small, but mine. My choices were my own. My future was unwritten and terrifying and beautiful. I was free. And Derek Brooks, the man who'd stolen 3 years of my life, who'd tried to break me, who'd learned too late that violence only works on people who won't fight back, he would spend the rest of his life remembering the night his wife stopped being afraid. Sometimes justice looks like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like a woman standing her ground. And sometimes, just sometimes, it looks like a man on the floor, covered in broken coffee mugs, finally understanding that he was never as powerful as he thought. I smiled as I unlocked my apartment door. Tomorrow I'd teach another class, help another woman find her strength, continue building the life I deserved. But tonight I was just Natalie Brooks, survivor, teacher, fighter, and that was more than enough.